Welcome to the RP Programming webinar. The first thing we need to do is start off by opening up the software. I'm going to be opening up RP2. I'm going to double click on the icon on the desktop. You can see I'm running version 2.0.4. The next box that's going to open up is talking about how ElkRP is a sophisticated programming tool. I'm just going to click OK there. And now you can actually see a list of all the accounts I have and also the folders. You can put an account into a folder or make a new folder. This is just a way of kind of organizing your accounts. Like I've got ones from videos, from training classes I've done, sales rep panels I've worked with. But what we would like to do is make a new account. And let's go through actually setting up the account. There's two ways we can open up a new account. We can go up here to New on the toolbar top and just left click on that. Or we can go over to File, left click there, and then left click on New Account. The box is going to pop up. It's going to ask us all the information about the new account. The account ID is actually going to be the name of the account. So we can call this anything we want to. I'm going to call mine RP Webinar. Next it's going to ask us for the system type, whether it's going to be an M1 Gold or an Easy 8 panel. The next piece of information we need to put into is the serial number. This is going to be an 8-digit long serial number. For an M1 Gold, they're going to start off with a couple of zeros. Mine here at my office is going to be this serial number. You can find this information on the outside of an M1 box or on the clamshell itself of the panel. It's actually going to be a sticker on the bottom of the panel. We now need to put in the RP access code. This is actually the PIN number that allows the software to be able to connect to the panel itself. This number must be the same in the software as stored in the panel, otherwise the software will not connect to the panel. The default number is 246801. Last but not least, we need to decide whether we're going to copy from another account. Let's say you were doing a panel swap and you already have all the account is stored, but now you just need to program the new panel. You can actually retrieve all that information out of one account and be able to send it to the new panel. It takes next to no programming time. But what we would like to do is create a default account. It's going to ask us for what style firmware does the panel have. Whether it's going to have a 4 series account, which is going to support the GE wireless receiver, which will be the NX548E, or do we want a 5 series firmware? All our panels ship with a 5 series firmware. This is the firmware that we need for the M1 XRF2G for the GE Crystal transmitters, or the M1 XRF2H for the Honeywell 5800 series transmitters. So since all our panels ship with 5 series, I'm going to stick with that and click OK. Now we're actually retrieving the account information. Now we're actually coming up to the account details page. Of course, we still have our toolbar across the top. On the left hand side of the screen we actually have our folder items, or I like to call it my tree. We have the name and address in the middle section of the screen. You can fill out all this information if you want to. Down here under notes, these are actually going to be the notes stored in the software. You can have friendly reminders about the account, like be sure Mr. Smith's phone number is always there to report non-alarm emergencies. Always remember to take your shoes off before entering, small things like that. On the right hand side of the screen, it's all about the system itself. So you got the hardware, the bootware version, the firmware version, the date that it was installed. I also have a place to put a URL or an IP address for the XEP. Of course, down here we actually have our RP access code. There's 3 different ways we can actually connect to a panel. So I'm going to go up here to Connection. I'm going to drop down this box and we're going to talk about each one. The first way we can actually program a panel is using a direct connection. That would be like using a straight through serial cable, or if your computer doesn't have a serial port on it, you need a USB to 232 serial port converter cable. Next we can actually use by dialing into the panel, and here's all the different choices you have to be able to dial in. The nice thing about dialing into a panel is the M1 panel itself has a 2400 baud rate modem built on board. So you're not going to need any special hardware from us to be able to use the modem already existing in your computer. The last way we can actually connect is actually through the network, and this is actually be the way that I will connect to my panel. I have an Ethernet module here, and what I'll do is I'll just type in the IP address of my Ethernet module on the network. Or I can go down to the XEP tab, find it on the network, and just use selected that IP address. What I would like to do is I'm going to go ahead and start programming up the panel without connecting to it, and then make the connection, and then download all the information into the panel. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the left hand side of the screen. The first thing that's going to be here is users. Now you can see there's a plus mark, so if we go ahead and we left click on the plus mark, it will actually show us all the users in the account. As you can see, I only have one user because this is a default account. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here, I'm just going to hit left click on users. It's now going to show up on the main screen. If I double click on users, it's now going to take us to where we can actually program user 1. Now 3456 is actually our master default code. You can see here under user authorizations how this is a master code. Now if we would like to set up a new user, we would come over here to users. We're going to left click on users. We're then going to right click on the mouse to bring up a new box. And of course it's going to ask us, would you like to make a new user? We left click on that. The new box opens up that says new users. How many would you like to create? Right now it's saying 1, but we can put in 10. The next piece of information says the first user number 1 through 199. The first available slot open to us is slot 2. If we wanted to, we could leave slot 2 open and start at slot 3, slot 7, slot 25. It doesn't matter. It just allows you to have that choice. I'm going to leave it at slot 2 and click OK. Now we need to fill out whether we would like to use a custom value or copy from another user. Of course, since I only have one user, it's going to ask me to copy from user 1. Now I know user 1's my master code, so I don't want to do that. But let's say for an instance you had a bunch of access people that are just going to be able to access the facility. What you could do is make one user have access and then copy from that user the other 10 people. This will save you a lot of programming time. I'm going to click on custom values and click OK. Now, as you can see here, user 2 is now up here and we can type in the name if we want. Now if you notice, it's turning yellow. And if you also notice down here on the lower right hand screen, this little modify light's been on the entire time since we've opened this account. It's because we haven't saved this new information yet. As soon as we come up here and click save, the yellow will actually drop away because now we've actually saved that account. Now we can use a card, key fob, or I button. As long as it's 26-bit, we can input into us. We would actually check that box and go over to the reader and learn that person actually in. Or we can come down here to code, where we'd actually put in default a 4-digit PIN number. Now, if you're always giving out your customers the exact same PIN number, well, it's not going to be too hard for somebody to have access to a panel that's not actually theirs. The software will allow you to generate your own code. So somebody says, just give me a user code. What you could do is just sit here and crank out different user codes. What we have to do is go ahead and save this information, or we could leave it and make a save later on. As you can see, our user 2 authorizations is no longer a master code. And we can also uncheck things if we didn't want them to allow to see the menus 1 through 5 in the keypad. Right now this code's only going to work in area 1 or the first account or the first partition, depending on your terminology. And right now, since this is a default account, we only have one area, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and you can see how we can type in an area name if we want to. Like we could say main house, for instance, or whatever you would actually like to call your area. We have 2 different entry-exit delay times. You can either type in the number here, or you could use the up-down arrows to make it longer or shorter. We have different arming options that you can actually check and send that information to the panel if you need to. The stay key on the defaulted panel, the instants automatically do not show up, but it will allow you to change if armed in the stay mode. So if it's armed in the stay mode, you can go up to a keypad and press the stay button. It will then turn the panel into night mode. So some of the motion detectors in the house could actually be active. Now again, we're still not connected because this button doesn't allow us to touch it, or any of the send, receive, and log and status buttons up at the top. Keypads, again, anything with the plus button, expand under the folder items. So we can left click on keypad 1. We can actually name our different keypads depending on their location throughout the home or commercial facility. We can assign keypads to different areas. This is actually talking about the wire harness hanging out of the keypad. There's 2 extra wires. There's a brown wire and a blue wire. The blue wire is an extra zone wire in case you need it. For keypad 1, this zone will be attached to zone 193. Let's say you forgot to run the wires to the side door, but you have a keypad there. Instead of running the zone wires all the way back to the panel, you could just run them to the keypad. We have different options of how the keypad's actually going to work for us. We can go ahead and set up the backlight beep tone and volume, and you can see here we can actually define the keys. Now since this is the original keypad, we actually have the 6 function keys. Even though one of the function keys says it's disabled, if we write an automation rule to it, it's actually going to work for us. We're going to be moving on to zones. I'm going to go ahead and expand that out. You can see I have hardwired zones. If I can go ahead and expand that out again, it shows me all the zones under the folder trees. Or if I just click on it, it's actually going to expand it up to the main screen of the software. So we can get in here to Zone 1. I'm just going to go ahead and left click on that, and we'll make Zone 1 be the front door. Now the definition is exactly how you're actually going to define how is the panel itself going to look out after the zone. This is a nice drop down box. Anything with an arrow means it's a drop down box. So we can actually go in here and see exactly how we want to define this. I'm just going to leave it as burglary entry exit delay. You can see everything's turning out to be yellow because I have made changes. The type is actually going to refer to the wiring. We are normally end of line supervised, which means you have to use that little resistor at the end of the zone. For us, that's going to be a 2.2 k ohm resistor. If you forgot your resistor coding, what that means is it's going to be 3 red stripes on the resistor. The last one, which is the gold color, actually refers to the tolerance. Now for the zone, we could actually tell the panel exactly which area this is going to be into, and also for the voice description. For the type for wiring, I know this is really common, and a lot of us, it's really hard to use those end-of-line resistors, especially in those really slim line door and window contacts. So for the M1 family, you can actually, the drop-down box will allow you to make them normally closed or open depending on what's easier for your wiring and for that particular zone. Of course, we also have end-of-line supervised short or open. Under attributes, you can actually set up exactly how you actually want this to work, whether the zone is going to be bypassable, a swinger shutdown, periodic trip. For periodic trip, this is confusing for some people. What this is during a disarm cycle, that zone has to be tripped at least once if it's longer than a 1 hour disarm period. This is great for a commercial building in case somebody set up a big stack of pallets or merchandise in front of a motion detector. That motion hasn't seen any motion for an entire disarm cycle. It will now give you a trouble signal. Also, as zones, we can go ahead and give voice description. So you could literally have the panel say front door is open. In order to do this, we can use the drop down box, or we can just left click on it and start typing in what we want it to say. Well, there's front, so I can go ahead and select that. I can come down here and do the exact same for door. I go ahead and type is, and you see it's about to be active or canceled or closed. I'm just going to select is. We go ahead and type in open, and see it actually pops up too. Now, we'll caution you one thing. A lot of people think they want voice because they think, hey, this is going to be great. If it's going to be a door that they're going to be using mostly to get in and out of the house, I recommend you not using voice. This will actually help your homeowner, because usually by the second week of them having voice, and they've heard this door's been opened for the 1,000th time, all of a sudden your homeowner does no longer want voice. We're going to come down here to telephone. I'm going to show you how to go ahead and start programming up for a central station reporting. First thing I'm going to do is click on telephones. I'm going to right click once I highlight telephones. It's going to open up a box just like it does for users. And I'm going to left click on new telephone. Again, just like users, it's going to ask me a little bit of information like number of telephones to create. Right now it's at 1. I want to select that to 2. First telephone number, 1 through 9, I'm going to go ahead and select 1 as the first one I'd like to program. So now it says CS telephone 1, type, always report to this number, and name. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put in CS for central station. And number to dial, I'm literally going to make up a number here. Now reporting format. Again, this is a drop down box since we have the arrow here, so I'm going to left click on that, and you can see all the different reporting formats we have. So right now I'm just going to pick contact ID because it's the first one popped up. Dialing attempt is 8. Now I just need to fill out the area's account number. So it's going to be whatever you and your central station have agreed upon. So for me, I'm going to keep mine really simple. So it's going to make mine 1234. And down here, report the following. Using this number, we've got areas, events, alarms, or strolls, and unbypasses, and global system event. We can also do zone bypasses or troubles if you need to. Now the next number I'd like to create is, of course, going to be the backup number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to call this CSB for central station backup instead of typing it all out. Number to dial. Well, maybe this is a totally different number, so it's going to be coming in through a different pathway to the central station. Since this is a backup number, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come up here, instead of always reporting this number, this drop down box, I'm going to pick report to this number as a backup. So now I'm going to select that. All the other information is grayed out. Since the software knows this is now a backup number, it's already going to know the reporting format and the account number. Now that's half the battle to get this thing to dial into a central station. Now we must go down here to communicator, or I can expand it out and select exactly which one on the side here I want to go to. I'm just going to go back up here to